Welcome back, Camden Catholic. Oh, man. I'd say the most boring period ever. I hate it when kids are taking tests. All right, anyway, so we are going to pick up where we sort of left off in class today, because technically these things overlap. It's all good. So we got to philosophy during the classical period today. Technically, this is still in the classical period of Greece, right? So we got to that portion, and then we also kind of got stalled out a little bit at Aristotle. We'll wrap him up tomorrow, and then we'll get into, actually, because he directly relates to the stuff we're talking about tomorrow. Anyway, well, we got to talk about the first big-time war from Greek to Greek, right? As in a city-state of Greece against another city-state of Greece. And it's called the Peloponnesian War, right? Oddly looks a lot like what? Peloponnese. Good job, Quinn. I heard you back there. That's right, Peloponnese, right? The region of mainland Greece that Sparta sits on. So anyway, it's called the Peloponnesian War because it was actually within Greece itself, okay? So first of all, here are the big causes behind it, right? So many Greek city-states are beginning to resent Athens and their domination of the Delian League. We talked about this in class already. We talked about how, like, Athens is pissing a lot of people off because they're using the money that they're gaining from the Delian League on personal items. They're not just rebuilding their city. They're rebuilding that city, right? So the big thing about it is, oh, by the way, shout out to Leah Dorenzo. I'm supposed to say what's up. What's up, Leah Dorenzo, even though you're in my honors class. But anyway, so they are ultimately ridiculously resentful. Because Pericles didn't just build a statue out of marble of Athena. He's built a 6-meter-tall ivory and gold statue of Athena inside the Parthenon. So a lot of smaller city-states are going to begin to revolt against Athens, several of them that were under their control. And then Sparta and Athens, first of all, were longtime rivals. Sparta did not want to help in the first Persian invasion. They didn't. They didn't want to help in the Ionian Revolt, so they didn't. The only reason Sparta helped in the second Persian invasion is simply due to the fact that Persia could have possibly impacted them, right? So, also, Sparta, out of opposition to the Delian League, will start their own league, called the Peloponnesian League, right? So, anyway, so it's Delian League versus Peloponnesian League. But first of all, let's start talking a little bit about how economics are going to be the reason why this war starts, right? So, if you want to really quick, I would pause it right here. Get it? All right, anyway, now that you've just paused it and written this down, economics are going to start this war. Almost every war is started over cash, right? So Athens is going to stop one of Sparta's allies by the name of Corinth from taking over a nearby city-state that was inside of the Delian League, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to lay siege to the colony of Corinth, right? So Athens is then going to slap Megara, which is actually the metropolis of Corinth, with trade sanctions. They were not allowed to trade with any allies of Athens, which would have been a death blow to their economy, right? So Corinth and Megara are going to convince Sparta to start the Peloponnesian League and go to war with Athens. Because Sparta's tired of this crap, too. Sparta's tired of the idea that this little pansy boy city-state is going to try and, like, government it up and act better than everyone, and also try to take economic control of the entire area of Peloponnese. If anything, you could honestly say as well that Sparta was just nervous that Athens was gaining too much ground. So let's talk about really quickly why this was going to be such a tough war to win. The reason why this is going to be such a tough war to win is because what Athens was great at, Sparta was weak at. And what Sparta was great at, Athens is weak at, right? So some of you are like, well, this just sounds like a race to whoever gets there first. Technically not true. So Athens' big strategy is they are a naval power, right? Here's your trireme vessel, that battering ram's right under there. They painted the big eyes on it to try and make it look fierce and aggressive. They are. Excuse me. Anyway, they're going to surround Sparta by the sea, all right? Next to that word, really quick, when you do that, that is called a blockade, right? A blockade. Really, really fast, I'll write it up here. But a blockade is when you prevent trade goods from going in or out of an area, right? A blockade. So the thing about it, they were trying to prevent food and supplies from reaching the Peloponnesian League, right? So they surrounded Sparta. Some of you are like, wait a minute, Mr. Terry, I thought Spartans didn't trade anyway. Well, this is true. They didn't, all right? However, they did colonize and have food stores in other areas, right? And what I mean by food stores is they would keep food stores in different areas of Greece in case they ever needed them for things like a famine, right? So also the Peloponnesian League, these little tiny city-states underneath Sparta's protection, needed those colonies and needed those products, right? So that's what Athens is going to do. It's going to try and blockade Sparta and try to, like, hit them with a death blow. But the thing about it is Sparta's like, all right, you want to play that game? Sparta uses a land blockade to actually use their strong military to surround the city-state of Athens and prevent it from raising food, right? Because the thing about it, remember, Pericles had just built those walls around Athens, right? So Athens looked kind of like this now. Here's its walls. Here's its naval base. It's got walls. Here's its boats. That's a really big boat. That's the worst boat that I've ever drawn. Right now, anyway, here are the walls around Athens. The Acropolis is right here, you know what I mean? You got the Parthenon, like, doing its little thing, right? And then you got the Agora down here, okay? Like, you got the Agora down there, right? Well, the thing about it is, people didn't really live within the city walls unless you were fabulously wealthy. Most of your people actually lived out here, and they farmed these different areas. So what Sparta's going to do is they're just going to come in and wreck house and try to knock out those farms and set up a blockade around the city itself. And the thing about it is they actually didn't have a navy until the end of the war. If you know what I'm saying. We'll get there in a little bit. Don't get too excited, all right? Calm down a little bit, all right? So now anyway, this is the track of the Peloponnesian, like it's a map of the Peloponnesian War itself. So everything in green is under the allies of Sparta. Everything in orange and light orange is actually the allies of Athens, right? If it's in like a little blue dot, those are some of the areas that allied with Athens that are their food stores and things like that. Of course, there's a few neutral states, which actually at the time were being controlled loosely by a guy named Philip II of Macedonia. Crete was neutral, things like that. Now, as you can tell, the Athenian campaign was all completely over the water, and it was the idea that we're going to try and strangle their supplies out, right? Whereas the Spartan campaign is completely over the land, and they are basically trying to destroy smaller city-states. Places like Thebes, places like Plataea, places like, well, no, Thebes and Plataea are actually with Sparta. Sorry about that. Places like Delium, places like, where else? Ionia, places like Lebo, a lot of these different little areas. So, anyway, now here's the thing, though. What's going to result? It's called a stalemate, all right? So the problem with this whole war is the fact that Sparta was very strong on land, Athens, very strong in the water. So they end up actually, for most of the war, just banging against each other and no one's gaining an upper hand, right? And it also was on and off again. It's just a very few short periods of peace in between where they weren't fighting, and then they would pick it back up again. And the war, oh, God, oh, I forgot to change it. I don't want to look at it. When I made this, I was 26 years old, and now I'm 30. Oh God, because I am older than I'm older than the Peloponnesian War now. Oh, gross. Anyway, so there's a few short periods of peace between, but a stalemate is when neither side is winning, all right? It would literally be like if myself and Austin were standing in the middle of the floor, just slapping each other repeatedly, or playing like that game, you know, like, and actually neither of us were winning. Or the great example of a stalemate is if we're playing rock, paper, scissors, and we both just keep throwing the same thing, right? That's a stalemate. No one's winning. So the thing about it is, who do you think is going to break the stalemate? If you said Sparta, you're right. But it's actually because of a lot of screw-ups on the Athenian side, right? So anyway, so first of all, it sucks to be Athens, all right? So there's this thing that broke out called the Plague of Athens, right? They were severely weakened by a plague that broke out, and it killed almost a third of their population. So, including their famous leader, Pericles, right? Pericles is going to die from this plague. We believe, you should write this down. Anyway, this is really good stuff. We believe that the bacteria that killed them is called this. Yersinia pestis. The same bacteria that actually causes the Black Death Plague, right? So it's a bacteria. It's actually not a virus at all. So killed Pericles, killed a huge part of their population, and the plagues actually might even pop up again in like 500 AD, with the plague of Justinian, and then again in the 1300s in Europe. Oh, that Yersinia pestis. It's just running around all over the place, right? Then there was this thing that the Athenians really screwed up on called the Syracuse Expedition. So the Athenians made an attempt in 416 BC to try and invade Sicily. There's a small colony and city-state known as Syracuse that is one of the allies of Sparta. Sparta also used much of that colony to gain their wheat resources so they could continue to eat during this time. So what ended up happening, though, the Athenians landed on the beachhead, but the Spartans had found out that they were on their way and were waiting for them and killed most of the Athenians in the water. It was a massacre, right? Absolute massacre. The Athenians really screwed up. The Spartans found out that they were on the way, and they ended up killing all of them as they stood in the water. They barely even got out of the ocean, right? So, because think about it, the whole land forces was just waiting for them. The Athenians wanted to use the element of surprise, but here's the crazy thing. Who do you think convinced them to go? Socrates convinced them to go, right? He told them about the Syracuse Expedition. He later is going to then speak out against the myths. Socrates, you know how Socrates died in the long run? They forced him to kill himself because he spoke down about their faith, right, following this failed expedition. And so they made him drink poisoned hemlock, right? So it's a poison. Hemlock's a root, and they would actually cook it down, and it would make a poison juice, and he had to drink it. Plato apparently actually handed him the slide under the door, Seamus. All right, I got you. So hemlock is a poisonous thing when it's actually brewed like a tea, and the Socrates had to drink it, actually. So he actually ended up drinking and he died. There's actually a very famous piece of art. If you remind me to show it to you tomorrow, I'll show it to you, where Plato's like handing him the thing and he's covering his face and he's really upset. But Socrates is about to drink it like a man and he's going like this. It kind of looks like he's giving the finger to the entire room, but he's not. He's actually pointing straight up like that. So anyway, now, they hoped, though, to destroy Sparta's food supply, but they were surrounded and annihilated as they stood in the water. Rough stuff. Pause it real quick and jot that down. I'm trying to not make this too long, right? So, Sparta, though, eventually is going to win the war by doing one of the most dirty things in all of history. All right, so they are going to do one of the most grimy things you could possibly do. Khalil, I know, is on the edge of his seat like, what? What'd they do? So, they ended up calling up somebody to get a naval force. It's one of the dirtiest things you could ever do. It's like, this is worse than, like, sending a Snapchat about someone to the to that person on accident. Like, this is bad. This is bad, bad. All right? So what they ended up doing is they called Persia. Oh, yes. The Spartans allied with Persia and borrowed their naval fleet as Ionia was revolting against Athens due to the fact that they were starving because they were now not under the control, like being helped by Athens enough. And they revolted against the Delian League. And Sparta's going to end up taking over. Absolute debauchery. So messed up, right? So Syracuse, of course, that expedition weakened the Athenians, but they held out for about 10 more years after that. Spartans finally conquered Athens in 404 BC, proving their dominance over the region of Peloponnese, right? So Athens is going to have to give up its entire navy and all of its colonies, and they had to follow Spartan foreign policy. I don't think oh yeah. They had to end up following Spartan foreign policy. Now, here's the crazy thing about it. In this piece of artwork right here, nothing's going to last for long anyway, because there's another guy on the way soon that's about to take over everybody because of how weak everyone was, right? So we'll talk about that tomorrow, though. The war is going to end when they actually take them over. In the aftermath of the whole thing, Athens was the strongest. Now Sparta is. Much of Greece lies in complete ruin. Greece was severely weakened after a 27-year-long war. And then also, Greek culture is going to slow down, and that leaves room for none other than Alexander the Great, right, to come in and just wreck house, okay? So we're going to stop right there, though, and that's it. Very good stuff. We just broke down one of the hardest things to actually understand and remember in, like, no time at all, okay? So very freaking impressed with y'all right now. Y'all are kicking butt. Loved how y'all were all into the discussion of the theory of forms and the allegory of the cave today. But remember, don't be in the cave. Be out of the cave, right? Get out there, learn as much as you can, be smart, own your intelligence, right? I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great evening, Camden Catholic.